Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. And a very interesting update in the Eben Etzebeth scenario at the moment, with rumors that the decision for his suspension has been delayed until Sunday after his independent hearing allegedly took over or up to 5 hours last night as they went back and forth to the point where the meeting was apparently adjourned shortly before midnight with the intention of coming back on Sunday to finalize the sanction. And given the fact it's taken so long, given the fact that it has been adjourned, I don't think that we're looking at potentially good news, and it's going to be a very agonizing wait now if it has been delayed, in terms of what sort of punishment we're going to look at for Eben Etzebeth. I mean, if we look at, for example, some of the potential punishments, it doesn't look good at all. And this is kind of where we're at with that kind of sort of situation. So the big thing at the moment is, and this is what we know, is that last night at 7 p.m., the hearing took place, or began, I suppose. And in terms of those involved in the hearing, it's actually quite a high person from World Rugby. It is Christopher Quinlan, KC, who's the chairman of World Rugby's independent judicial panel. He is chairing the panel. And apparently from the Eben Etzebeth side, advocate Adrian Monzinga is defending Eben. Now, apparently, the trial began around, the hearing began around 7 p.m. on Tuesday night and adjourned shortly before midnight. And the panel requesting an adjournment until Sunday. Why until Sunday? Who knows? I mean, that, for example, means that he's unavailable for the Sharks this weekend in a game where they could really, really use him. So that's quite frustrating from that kind of point of view. And this is kind of the whole point that we're supposed to be having with the new sort of hearing process, that these sort of things could take less time so we can kind of get these decisions, because whatever the decision is, the Boks need to be able to plan for it. Sharks need to plan for it. Now, I'm not saying the Boks not being able to get the decision today is a massive thing for them, but the Sharks do. The Sharks need to plan for what's going on. Do they need to almost look at bringing in a short-term lock, for example, if he's going to be out for the rest of the season? There is huge ramifications with regards to this ban. So adjourning till Sunday becomes very, very frustrating. In terms of some background, though, Christopher Quinlan has actually been. He was part of the Ty Burn hearing, which obviously they then rescinded that red card, and also was almost sort of famously part of. He chaired the panel that gave Johnny Sexton that 3-match ban after his exchange with Jaco Paper. That ban that conveniently ended just in time for the Irish World Cup. Yeah, that one. So he's been involved in some pretty high profile judicial hearings, but as the chairman of the World Rugby Independent Judicial panel, you'd imagine that he was always kind of going to be part of that. So yeah, that's kind of what we know at the moment. And again, if we're looking at what's sort of going on in the trial, apparently Eben and his team are arguing reckless contact with the eyes. Whereas, whereas the big sort of debate is whether it's reckless or whether it is intentional. Now, if it is intentional, that is very, very serious. So if you go with reckless contact, you're kind of starting from 6 weeks up to about sort of 18 plus weeks. That's kind of where you're at with your reckless eye contact with the eyes. However, intentional starts at 12 weeks at the low end, can go up to 24 plus weeks, and it's a maximum of 208 weeks, as is reckless contact. But generally, you think reckless contact is, by definition of it being less serious than intentional contact, you're looking at probably a shorter sanction. I don't think you'd look at much more than maybe a 12 to 16 week. If you go to the mid-range, even at the top end, you'd probably look at 18 weeks if it is considered reckless, absolute top end. Whereas if they go and decide this is intentional eye contact, that's when all of a sudden you're looking at big bans. That's when you're looking at him not playing until next year, end of the year type of thing, because that could be a potential year ban and the likes. So the fact that it was a 5 hour, I mean, it's an interesting, 5 hours when you think that it's a 20-second incident, 25-second incident is quite mental. And there's so many different things that are going to go into it. Obviously the big thing at the moment is, you got to break it down. So first of all, what was the incident? Okay, so it's the eye-gouging incident. Right, what led up to the incident? Was he provoked? Was it an incident? Because that's what they're basically arguing. And what's the big thing over here is that he was basically was provoked. I don't think it really sort of mitigates it too much, but that comes into it. You look at Murphy, for example, who had his red card rescinded against Jan Hendrik Wessels because of the incident that happened. So the provocation will definitely come into it, in all honesty. And the big thing is that if there was a reason for it, they might look at that with regards to the sentencing. But the main thing is to decide on what are they saying the incident is. Are they saying that it was intentional eye contact? Are they saying it was reckless, for example? Once they decide on a verdict with regards to that, then it comes to the sentencing. And I think from the sounds of it, it's the sentencing is where the issue is. And in terms of not being able to decide what the kind of ban should be. And that's very worrying, the fact that after all those hours, they're going to have to come back on Sunday to decide what the kind of ban is going to be. Because that could mean that some of the hearing, for example, some of the panel are saying, well, we're thinking mid-range or low range. Some of the panel are saying, we're going high range. This is going to be a really big one. So it's not an ideal situation, in all honesty. Now, unfortunately, all we can do is wait and see. Now, Rasmus will give a press conference tomorrow, reacting to the World Cup draw. It'll be interesting to see, actually, if they almost deliberately say we can't speak about the Eben Etzebeth process, because he's definitely going to get asked about it, given the fact that we have had no official update with regards to what's happening with the hearing. What is the update, and when might we get some sort of decision? So I think Rasmus, unless he gets blocked from asking or being asked, will get asked the question, what is the situation with him? And whether he actually gives an update or not, we'll only see tomorrow, unfortunately. But it sounds like the main things, we're not going to get a decision today, and from the sounds of it, this week, which I think is pretty poor, in all honesty. I mean, to adjourn until Sunday, I'd love to know what everyone is doing. It's so important that we're going to have to wait until Sunday. You'd think that if you're only available for these panels, you're kind of available for this week, and you need to be able to find time to start this, unless there's a case of they want to go and gather more evidence and the likes of that. But I mean, we've had two days. It's the entire instant, even with the leading up ruck, for example, is less than 2 minutes. There's surely enough camera angles, the likes of it, to have gotten everything we need to come to a decision. And I always feel with these things, the longer it takes, the more sort of farcical it becomes. And I think that's the biggest problem. You need to be able to have these things relatively quickly, not overly quickly, so that there's no time for anything to sort of be presented from an evidence point of view. But you've got to be able to have a process where this doesn't drag on. Anything that drags on like this is really, really poor. So what are you thinking? How big of a sentence are we talking? What do you think he deserves? What do you think he's going to get? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.